Colorado Territory, 1872. The first light of dawn brushed gold across the distant peaks as Olivia Rose wiped flour-covered hands on her apron and gazed out the ranch house window. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and promise, but her mind wasn't on the apple pies cooling on the sill. It was on the letter clutched in her pocket, the one promising that this year's Madison County Fair would have a proper baking competition with a prize substantial enough to change a woman's fortunes. "Those pies won't judge themselves, Miss Rose," called Mrs. Whitaker, the elderly housekeeper, as she shuffled into the kitchen. "And the men will be wanting their breakfast soon." Olivia nodded, tucking a wayward strand of copper hair back into place. At 22, she had been cook at the Galloping Y Ranch for 3 years now. Ever since her father's passing had left her with nothing but debts and his ancient recipe book. The Yardley family had taken her in when options for a respectable woman were scarce in these parts. Cooking for ranch hands wasn't the life she'd imagined, but it kept her fed and housed. "I was just thinking about the fair," Olivia admitted. "Ah." Mrs. Whitaker smiled knowingly. "Your mother's apple pie recipe again? The one that won hearts, I hear. And apparently a husband," Olivia said with a soft laugh. Though Papa always said it was her smile, not her pie, that sealed the deal. The sound of boots on the porch ended their conversation as Graham Yardley, the owner's eldest son, ducked through the doorway, removing his hat in one fluid motion. At 30, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm, he commanded attention without trying. "Morning, Miss Rose." "Mrs. Whitaker." His voice carried the kind of authority earned from years of ranch management. "Coffee ready?" "Just brewed," Olivia replied, pouring him a cup with steady hands that belied the flutter in her chest, a flutter that had been growing more persistent these past months. Graham accepted the coffee with a nod that lingered a moment too long on her face. "Something smells mighty fine in here." "Miss Rose is practicing her pie-making," Mrs. Whitaker announced, "for the county fair." A smile tugged at Graham's lips. "Is that so? Well, if they taste half as good as they smell, you'll have those judges eating out of your hand." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm not certain I'll enter yet." "Why not?" Graham asked, taking a seat at the kitchen table. "Best apple pie in 3 territories, I'd wager." "The entry fee is $5, Olivia said quietly. "Quite a sum." Graham's expression shifted, but before he could respond, the kitchen door swung open again as his father, Edward Yardley, entered with the foreman, Frank Thompson. "Morning all," Edward called out. "Graham, we've got trouble at the north pasture fence. Looks like those Preston boys have been cutting wires again." The moment broken, Graham drained his coffee cup and stood. "I'll handle it, Pa." As he reached the door, he turned back. "Miss Rose, don't you worry about that entry fee. Consider it an investment from the Galloping Y." With a tip of his hat, he was gone. Olivia stared after him, conflicted emotions churning inside her. Was it charity? Or something else entirely? And why did the thought of either possibility make her heart race so? The next week passed in a blur of preparations. Not only was Olivia perfecting her mother's apple pie recipe, but the entire ranch was readying for the fair. The Yardleys planned to show horses and cattle, meaning everyone from the highest ranch hand to the lowliest stable boy had extra duties. On the evening before they were to leave for town, Olivia found herself alone in the kitchen, methodically slicing apples for one final practice pie. The distinct sound of spurs announced Graham's arrival before she saw him. "Still at it. I see," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "I want everything to be perfect," Olivia replied, not looking up from her work. Graham crossed the room and picked up a thin slice of apple, popping it into his mouth. "Some things already are." Their eyes met briefly, and Olivia fumbled with her knife. "Mr. Yardley, Graham," he corrected. "We've known each other long enough, don't you think?" "Graham," she echoed, the name feeling intimate on her tongue. "I wanted to thank you for the entry fee. It was very generous." "It's nothing," he said, waving away her thanks. "Besides, I have an ulterior motive." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Graham smiled, a rare full smile that transformed his usually serious face. "I've made a substantial bet with Henry Preston that the Galloping Y will take home more ribbons than his outfit. Your pie could be the deciding factor." Disappointment flickered through Olivia, though she couldn't quite name why. "I see. Well, I'll do my best not to let you down." "You couldn't," he said, his voice dropping lower. He reached out and briefly touched her hand, leaving a trail of warmth where his fingers had been. "There's something else I've been meaning to ask you." The kitchen door banged open as 3 dusty ranch hands tramped in, laughing about something. Graham straightened immediately, the moment shattered. "Miss Rose, any chance of coffee for us poor souls?" called Mitch, the youngest hand. "Of course," she answered automatically, though her mind was elsewhere. What had Graham been about to ask her? He was already backing toward the door. "I should finish packing the wagon. Early start tomorrow." He paused, an unreadable expression crossing his face. "Good night, Olivia." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and she found herself repeating it in her mind long after he'd gone. Madison wasn't much of a town compared to Denver, but during fair time, it transformed. Colorful bunting hung from every available surface, and the normally quiet streets teemed with visitors from surrounding ranches and homesteads. For many, this was the social event of the year, a chance to trade news, show off livestock, and perhaps find a spouse among the eligible young people from distant properties. The Yardley party arrived mid-morning, setting up their camp at the fairgrounds alongside other ranching families. Olivia carefully transported her precious pies, 3 perfect specimens with golden brown crusts and the secret spice mixture her mother had perfected, to the judging tent. "Miss Rose," called a familiar voice as she arranged her entry on the designated table. Sarah Wheeler, a friend from town, hurried over with excitement written across her face. "I heard you were entering." "Oh, but the competition is fierce this year." Olivia glanced around at the other entries being set up. "Anyone I should worry about in particular?" Sarah leaned closer. "Margaret Thornton has entered her blackberry pie, the one that won 2 years running before she married. And," she lowered her voice further, "Eliza Preston is entering an apple pie too." "Preston?" Olivia's stomach tightened. "As in, Henry Preston's daughter, yes." Sarah's eyes gleamed with the delight of sharing gossip. "Word is she's set her cap for Graham Yardley. Her father may be feuding with the Yardleys over water rights, but she apparently believes a marriage could solve all that." Olivia's hands stilled on her pie. "I didn't realize." "Oh yes. Quite the beauty too, though a bit cold for my taste." Sarah patted Olivia's arm. "But don't worry about your pies. They look absolutely divine." As Sarah moved away, Olivia found herself scanning the crowd until she spotted her, Eliza Preston, tall and elegant in a fashionable blue dress that made Olivia's carefully mended calico seem shabby by comparison. She was laughing up at a tall man whose back was turned to Olivia, but she would recognize those broad shoulders anywhere. "Graham." Something twisted painfully in Olivia's chest. Of course, a man in Graham's position would naturally be drawn to someone like Eliza Preston, wealthy, beautiful, from a good family despite the feud. What had Olivia been thinking, imagining there could ever be anything between them beyond employer and employee? She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the approaching figure until a shadow fell across her pies. "So you're Edward Yardley's cook." Olivia looked up to find Henry Preston himself appraising her with cold eyes. In his 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair, he exuded the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. "I am," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "Heard you make quite the apple pie." His gaze shifted to her entries. "My daughter's been baking since she was knee-high. Won ribbons all over the territory." "I wish her luck, then," Olivia said politely. Preston's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Luck won't be necessary, though you might need some yourself. Judges tend to favor certain names around here." Before Olivia could respond, another voice cut in. "Is there a problem, Mr. Preston?" Graham had appeared beside them, his stance protective as he positioned himself slightly in front of Olivia. "Just making conversation, Yardley." Preston's smile turned into a smirk. "Saw you chatting with my Eliza earlier. She was quite taken with you." "Miss Preston was kind enough to show me her father's new stallion," Graham replied evenly. "Fine animal." "Yes. Well, there's more where that came from." Preston's implication hung in the air. "Good day to you both." As he walked away, Graham turned to Olivia. "Don't let him rattle you. He's all bluster." "It seems his daughter has made quite an impression," Olivia said, trying to keep her tone light. Graham's expression darkened. "Politics, nothing more. The Prestons want our water rights, and they think." He trailed off, then shook his head. "It doesn't matter what they think. Your pies look perfect." A bell rang, signaling that all entries needed to be registered, and that the judging tent was closing to contestants. "I should go," Olivia said. Graham caught her hand briefly. "Meet me by the oak tree behind the exhibition hall after the judging. There's something I need to tell you." Heart hammering, Olivia nodded before hurrying from the tent, wondering what secret Graham Yardley could possibly want to share with her, and whether she was brave enough to hear it. The judging seemed to take forever. Olivia wandered the fairgrounds in a state of nervous anticipation, both for the competition results and her mysterious meeting with Graham. She passed the time watching the galloping wise horses win ribbons in several categories, applauding along with the other ranch workers. At last, the announcement came that the baking competition results had been posted. Olivia made her way through the crowd, stomach churning with nerves. A cluster of women blocked her view of the board, their excited chatter making it impossible to hear individual names. "Excuse me," she murmured, trying to edge closer. One of the women turned, Eliza Preston herself, her perfect features arranged in a smile that didn't quite mask the ice in her eyes. "Oh, you're the Yardley cook, aren't you?" She paused. "I'm so sorry about your pie." Olivia's heart sank. "I didn't place?" Something like satisfaction flickered across Eliza's face. "You didn't hear? There was an incident with some of the entries. Yours included." She gestured toward the judging tent. "You should probably check on them." Confused and increasingly alarmed, Olivia pushed her way to the tent. Inside, a small commotion centered around the table where her pies had been displayed. One of the judges was speaking in hushed tones with the fair organizer. "What happened?" Olivia asked, approaching them. The organizer, a portly man named Mr. Collins, turned to her with a frown. "Miss Rose, there seems to have been some tampering with your entries." "Tampering?" "Someone poured salt all over them," the judge explained. "Completely ruined. We couldn't include them in the judging." Olivia stared in disbelief at her pies, now covered with a thick layer of white crystals. All her work, her hopes, ruined. And she had little doubt who was behind it. "I'm very sorry," Mr. Collins said, genuinely sympathetic. "It's too late to remake them, I'm afraid." Nodding numbly, Olivia turned to leave the tent, blinking back tears of frustration. Outside, she nearly collided with Sarah. "Olivia, I just heard," Sarah exclaimed. "It's absolutely dreadful. And to think—" She stopped abruptly, glancing over Olivia's shoulder. "What?" Sarah hesitated. "Nothing. It's just, I saw Eliza Preston coming out of the judging tent earlier, looking rather pleased with herself." "But that doesn't mean—" "It means exactly what we're both thinking," Olivia said quietly. "But why would she go to such lengths over a simple pie contest?" "Perhaps it's not about the pie at all," Sarah suggested delicately. "Word is, she saw Graham Yardley paying particular attention to you. And the Prestons aren't known for sharing what they consider theirs." The implication settled heavily on Olivia's shoulders. She glanced at the clock on the exhibition hall. Almost time for her meeting with Graham. Whatever he wanted to tell her, it couldn't possibly matter now. Not when she'd failed so completely. "I should get back to the camp," she said, turning away. "Wait." Sarah caught her arm. "You can't give up now. The final judging for the grand prize isn't until tomorrow. You could make another pie tonight." "With what?" "I've used all my special ingredients." Sarah's eyes lit up. "My uncle owns the general store. He'll open up for us, I'm sure of it." For a moment, hope flickered in Olivia's chest. Then reality dampened it. "Even if I could get ingredients, where would I bake it? We only have a campfire." "The hotel kitchen," Sarah said promptly. "Mrs. Jenkins owes me a favor. Please, Olivia, don't let them win like this." Olivia hesitated, thinking of Graham waiting by the oak tree, of all she'd hoped for from this competition. Then she straightened her shoulders. "Let's go see your uncle." Graham stood beneath the oak tree, watching the shadows lengthen across the fairgrounds. Olivia was late, very late. He checked his pocket watch for the 10th time, concern growing with each passing minute. "She's not coming, you know." He turned to find Eliza Preston approaching, a sympathetic expression on her beautiful face that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Miss Preston," he acknowledged with a nod. "I'm waiting for someone." "Yes, your cook." Eliza moved closer. "I just saw her leaving the fairgrounds with Sarah Wheeler. She seemed quite upset." Graham frowned. "Why would she be upset?" "Oh dear, you haven't heard." Eliza's tone was perfectly calibrated to convey distress, while clearly enjoying being the bearer of bad news. "Someone tampered with her pies. They were disqualified." "What?" Graham's hands clenched involuntarily. Who would do such a thing? Eliza shrugged delicately. Who can say? These competitions bring out the worst in people. Perhaps she simply couldn't bear to face you after such a failure. Something in her tone made Graham look more closely at her. You seem remarkably well informed about all this, Miss Preston. A flash of something, guilt? Defiance, crossed her face before her smile returned. Word travels quickly at a fair. In any case, since your evening appears to be unexpectedly free, perhaps you'd join me and my father for dinner? He's very eager to discuss a possible resolution to our differences. Graham's jaw tightened. I think not. If you'll excuse me. He turned to leave, but Eliza's next words stopped him cold. She's just a cook, Mr. Yardley. Hardly suitable company for a man of your position. My father could offer you far more advantageous connections. Slowly, Graham turned back. Miss Preston, let me be perfectly clear. I have no interest in your father's offers, his water rights disputes, or his connections. And if I discover that you had anything to do with Miss Rose's misfortune today, the Preston name will find itself unwelcome at every fair and social gathering in the territory. Leaving Eliza open-mouthed behind him, Graham strode toward the galloping Wise camp. He needed to find Olivia, to make sure she was all right, and to finally say what he'd been working up the courage to tell her for months. The hotel kitchen was warm and bright, a welcome contrast to Olivia's dark mood as she measured and mixed ingredients for a new pie. Sarah had been true to her word, procuring both supplies and a place to bake. Now she sat at the kitchen table, keeping Olivia company as she worked. You should have seen Graham Yardley's face when I told him what happened to your pies, Sarah said, watching Olivia roll out dough. Olivia's hands stilled. You spoke with Graham? I ran into him searching the fairgrounds for you. He looked ready to tear someone apart. Sarah leaned forward, eyes gleaming. He asked me to tell you he's sorry he missed your meeting, and he'll find you first thing tomorrow. A complicated mixture of emotions washed through Olivia, disappointment that she'd missed him, warmth at his concern, anxiety about what he'd wanted to say. She channeled it all into her work, fingers deftly crimping the edges of the crust. Did you tell him where I am? Sarah shook her head. You asked me not to, though I don't understand why you're hiding from him. I'm not hiding, Olivia protested. I just need to focus on this pie. The truth was more complex. Part of her feared facing Graham after such a public failure. Another part worried about what his secret conversation might entail. Was it about Eliza Preston? About arrangements being made between their families? Well, you'd better work quickly, Sarah said, glancing at the clock. It's getting late, and you still need to let it cool properly before tomorrow's judging. Olivia nodded, sliding the pie into the oven. As she closed the door, the kitchen's back entrance swung open, admitting a blast of cool night air and the imposing figure of Edward Yardley himself. Miss Rose, he said, removing his hat. I thought I might find you here. Olivia straightened, wiping flour from her hands. Mr. Yardley, sir. Is something wrong? That depends, he said, taking a seat at the table. My son seems to think someone deliberately sabotaged your pies today. It appears that way, sir. Edward's weathered face remained impassive. And you're making another? Yes, sir. For tomorrow's final judging. He nodded slowly. Good. The Yardley name doesn't back down from a fight. He paused. Though I wonder if you understand what fight you're really in, Miss Rose. Olivia exchanged a glance with Sarah, who seemed equally confused. Sir, Henry Preston approached me this afternoon with a proposition. He's willing to drop his claim to our water rights in exchange for an alliance between our families. His eyes fixed steadily on Olivia. Through marriage. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I see. Olivia managed, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. Do you? Edward asked. Because my son rejected the idea outright. Caused quite a scene, apparently. Hope flickered in Olivia's chest, quickly dampened by practicality. Mr. Yardley, I don't understand why you're telling me this. Edward stood, settling his hat back on his head. My late wife won my heart with an apple pie at this very fair, 35 years ago. Graham favors me in many ways, it seems. He moved toward the door, then paused. The final judging is at noon. I expect the entire Yardley household to be present, cook included. After he left, Olivia stood frozen until Sarah broke the silence. Did Edward Yardley just give you his blessing to marry his son? Don't be ridiculous, Olivia said automatically, though her heart raced at the possibility. He was simply being supportive about the competition. Sarah raised her eyebrows skeptically. If you say so. Now, let's focus on making this the best pie Madison County has ever tasted. As Olivia returned to her work, she couldn't help wondering, what exactly had Graham said when he rejected the Preston proposal? And what would he say to her tomorrow? The morning of the final judging dawned clear and bright. Olivia had barely slept, spending the night perfecting her pie and then guarding it like a hawk until it was time to deliver it to the judging tent. This time, she personally handed it to Mr. Collins, who assured her it would be kept under close watch until the judging. Quite a crowd gathering, he noted as he carefully placed her pie with the other finalists. Word of yesterday's incident has spread. People are taking sides. Sides? Olivia asked. Preston versus Yardley, he explained. Been brewing for years, but this seems to have brought it to a head. Half the county thinks the Prestons were behind the tampering. Olivia glanced across the tent where Eliza Preston was arranging her own entry, pointedly ignoring the whispers around her. And the other half think it's all a storm in a teacup, he said with a shrug. Baking contests bringing out the worst in folks, that's all. As Olivia left the tent, she spotted Graham standing with his father near the exhibition hall. Their eyes met across the distance, and he immediately started toward her, weaving through the crowd with determination. Olivia, he said as he reached her, relief evident in his voice. I've been looking everywhere for you. I was finishing my pie, she explained. Your father found me last night. Graham's expression tightened. Did he now? What did he say? That you'd refused some sort of arrangement with the Prestons, she said carefully, and that he expected me at the judging. A slow smile spread across Graham's face. Is that all he said? Wasn't it enough? Not nearly. Graham took her hand, leading her away from the bustle of the fairgrounds toward a quieter spot beneath a cottonwood tree. Olivia, what I wanted to tell you yesterday. Wait, she interrupted. Before you say anything, I need to know. Is there an understanding between you and Eliza Preston? Graham's laugh was quick and genuine. An understanding? Yes, I understand that her father wants my water rights and thinks his daughter is the price I should pay. His expression sobered as he took both her hands in his. The only understanding I'm interested in is between us. Olivia's breath caught. Us? I've been trying to find the right moment for months now, he said, his thumbs tracing circles on her palms. To tell you that I've fallen in love with the woman who bakes apple pies that taste like home, who hums when she thinks no one is listening, who treats every person on the ranch with the same dignity regardless of their station. Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. Graham, let me finish, he said softly. I know there's a difference in our positions. I know what people might say. I don't care. The only thing I care about is whether you could ever feel the same way about me. Olivia looked up into his storm gray eyes, seeing the vulnerability behind his usually confident demeanor. I already do, she whispered. I have for so long. His smile then was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Olivia rose onto her tiptoes, meeting his lips with her own in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. When they finally parted, Graham rested his forehead against hers. Whatever happens with the judging today, doesn't matter, she finished for him. Oh, it matters, he corrected with a grin. I still have that bet with Henry Preston, after all. Olivia laughed, happiness bubbling up inside her like spring water. Then we'd better not miss the results. Hand in hand, they walked back toward the fairgrounds, where a crowd was already gathering around the judge's platform. The atmosphere was tense as the finalists were announced. 6 pies had made it to the final judging, Eliza Preston's elegant creation among them, alongside Olivia's simpler but fragrant offering. The other 4 belonged to established Madison County matrons whose recipes had been perfected over decades. Olivia stood with the Yardley family, acutely aware of the glares from the Preston contingent across the crowd. Graham's hand rested reassuringly at the small of her back as the head judge stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge began. This year's baking competition has been unusually eventful. A ripple of knowing laughter passed through the crowd. But the quality of the final entries has been exceptional. After careful deliberation, we are ready to announce our decision. Olivia held her breath as the judge listed the runners-up, working backwards from 6th place. When only 2 pies remained, hers and Eliza's, A hush fell over the gathering. The second-place ribbon and prize of $10 goes to. The judge paused for effect. Miss Eliza Preston, for her caramel apple pie. A smattering of applause broke out, though Eliza's tight smile suggested second place was not what she had expected. And the blue ribbon, along with the grand prize of $50, goes to Miss Olivia Rose, for her heritage apple pie with cinnamon crust. The Galloping Y contingent erupted in cheers, drowning out the polite applause from the rest of the crowd. Graham pulled Olivia into a brief, exuberant embrace before she made her way to the platform to accept her ribbon and prize money. As she turned to face the crowd, ribbon pinned proudly to her dress, she caught sight of Henry Preston's thunderous expression and the calculating look he exchanged with his daughter. Something told Olivia this wasn't over yet. The thought was confirmed when, as people began to disperse, Eliza Preston approached her, perfectly composed despite her loss. "Congratulations, Miss Rose," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Quite the Cinderella story, a simple ranch cook winning the grand prize." "Thank you, Miss Preston," Olivia replied evenly. "Your pie looked lovely as well." Eliza leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Enjoy your moment. But remember, Graham Yardley has responsibilities to his family name. A dalliance with the help might amuse him for now, but men like him don't marry women like you." Before Olivia could respond, Graham appeared at her side, his arm sliding protectively around her waist. "Miss Preston," he acknowledged coolly, "I trust you're being gracious in defeat." "Always," Eliza replied sweetly, "just offering some friendly advice to Miss Rose." "How thoughtful," Graham said, his tone making it clear he suspected otherwise. "If you'll excuse us, I believe the winner deserves a celebration." As they walked away, Olivia couldn't help but feel a shadow over her joy. "She's right, you know," she said quietly. "People will talk." "Let them," Graham replied, drawing her closer. "My father already approves. Why else would he have sought you out last night? And anyone who matters will come around once they see how happy we are." Olivia wanted to believe him, but decades of understanding her place in the social hierarchy didn't disappear overnight. "And if they don't," Graham stopped walking, turning to face her fully, "then we'll build our own happiness, regardless of what anyone thinks. Olivia Rose, I'm asking you properly now, will you marry me?" Joy bloomed in her chest, bright enough to push back the shadows of doubt. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." Graham's answering smile was radiant as he pulled her into another embrace, this one witnessed by half the fairgoers. Propriety be damned. They had found something rare and precious, and Olivia wouldn't let fear or convention steal it away. The remainder of the fair passed in a blur of congratulations and celebrations. The Yardley Ranch hands treated Olivia like royalty, proudly telling anyone who would listen that their cook had won the grand prize. Edward Yardley had officially announced his son's engagement that very evening, cutting off any potential gossip at the knees with his obvious approval. But as they packed up to return to the ranch, the confrontation Olivia had been half expecting finally came. Henry Preston approached their camp, flanked by two of his men, his expression grim. "Yardley," he called, addressing Edward rather than Graham. "We need to talk." Edward straightened, his hand instinctively moving to the gun at his hip. "Say your piece and be gone, Preston. We're heading home. That water rights agreement we discussed, I'm withdrawing my offer." Preston's eyes flicked dismissively to Olivia. "Clearly your family's standards have shifted." Graham stepped forward, but Edward held up a hand to stop him. "Is that all, Preston? Because if it is, you've wasted your breath. I never intended to accept your offer in the first place." Preston's face flushed with anger. "You'll regret this. That creek runs through my property before it reaches yours. Accidents happen to water flow, you know. Are you threatening to dam our water supply?" Edward asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Because that would be illegal. And the last man who tried it ended up facing a federal marshal." The two men stared at each other for a long moment before Preston backed down, turning away with a dismissive gesture. "Come on, Eliza," he called to his daughter, who had been watching from a distance. "We're leaving this circus." But Eliza didn't move. Instead, she approached slowly, stopping before the Yardley party. "No, father," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "I'm staying." Preston turned back, disbelief written across his face. "What nonsense is this? I'm tired of being used as a bargaining chip in your feuds, Eliza said, a new strength in her voice that Olivia hadn't heard before. I'm tired of being told who to charm and who to sabotage. Yes, she added, glancing at Olivia. I ruined your pies yesterday, on my father's orders, and I'm ashamed of it. A murmur ran through the gathered ranch hands. Olivia stood frozen, surprised not by the confession but by Eliza's sudden rebellion. You ungrateful girl, Preston sputtered. After everything I've done, what you've done is try to sell me to the highest bidder, Eliza interrupted. Well, I won't be sold. Sheriff Miller is right over there, and I'm sure he'd be interested to hear about your plans to interfere with the Yardley water supply. Preston's face contorted with rage, but he was trapped. Too many witnesses, too public a place for the kind of retribution he clearly wanted to deliver. Fine, he spat. Stay, but don't come crawling back when you've got nothing. As he stormed off, Eliza turned back to the stunned Yardleys. I apologize for my behavior, she said formally. Both the pie incident and my words to you, Miss Rose. They were unworthy. Olivia nodded, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected turn of events. It was Edward who broke the silence. What will you do now, Miss Preston? Eliza straightened her shoulders. My aunt in Denver has offered me a place many times. I think I'll accept at last. She managed a small smile. I'm quite good with numbers. Perhaps I'll find work as a bookkeeper. Graham stepped forward. We can arrange transport to Denver for you, if you wish. Thank you, Eliza said, genuine gratitude in her voice. Then, looking at Olivia, she added, you were the better baker. And clearly, the better woman. I hope you'll both be very happy. As she walked away, Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Not just the resolution of the competition, but the unexpected clearing of what could have been a lifelong enemy. She slipped her hand into Graham's, watching as the fair that had changed everything began to dismantle around them. 1 year later, the kitchen of the Galloping Y main house smelled of cinnamon and apples, just as it had that fateful morning a year ago. But this time, Olivia Yardley, no longer Rose, was teaching a young ranch hand's wife the secrets of her prize-winning pie. The key is in how you slice the apples, she explained, demonstrating with swift, practiced movements. Too thick and they won't cook through. Too thin and they'll turn to mush. It smells heavenly already, sighed Jenny Thompson, Frank the foreman's new bride. I can see why it won Mr. Graham's heart along with that blue ribbon. Olivia smiled, her hand automatically moving to touch the small swell of her belly, still barely noticeable beneath her apron. The way to a man's heart is indeed through his stomach, or so they say. The back door opened, admitting Graham with an armload of firewood. He paused, taking in the scene with appreciation. Another baking lesson? You'll have the whole county making pies like yours at this rate. Hardly, Olivia laughed. Some secrets stay in the family. Graham set down the wood and crossed to her side, pressing a kiss to her temple. His hand joined hers over their growing child. Speaking of family, Pa's invited the Prestons for Sunday dinner. Both of them, Olivia asked, surprised. Eliza's just visiting from Denver. Apparently, her bookkeeping position has been quite successful. Graham's expression turned thoughtful. Old Henry's mellowed some since his heart troubles last winter. The new water-sharing agreement seems to be holding. Miracles do happen, Olivia mused. They certainly do. Graham gestured to the kitchen, to her, to the life they had built together. A year ago, who would have thought we'd be here? Jenny, sensing a private moment, discreetly excused herself, leaving husband and wife alone in the warm kitchen. I knew, Olivia said softly, turning into his embrace. The moment you paid my entry fee, I knew something was changing. I just never dared hope it would be everything I ever wanted. And is it? He asked, suddenly serious. Everything. Olivia looked around at the kitchen where she had once been merely the cook, now hers to manage as the mistress of the house. She thought of the respect she'd earned from the community, the friendship that had surprisingly developed with Eliza during her occasional visits, and the child that would arrive with the spring. Their child, their future. More than everything, she answered, rising on tiptoes to kiss him properly. It turns out my mother was right all along. About what? Olivia smiled against his lips. About her apple pie recipe. She always said it would win me more than just a blue ribbon someday. Graham laughed, the sound filling the kitchen with joy. Wise woman, your mother. As they stood together in the golden afternoon light, Olivia silently thanked whatever fate had led her to this moment. From a desperate young woman with nothing but an old recipe book to the beloved wife of a good man, carrying their child, secure in a home and family that were truly hers. Sometimes, she reflected as Graham pulled her closer, the sweetest victories came from the most unexpected places. Like a simple apple pie that had indeed won far more than just the county fair.